Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Today's video comes to you courtesy of the Nebula Navigators over on my Patreon. A quick plug, link down below, trying to get the 200 patrons for DD explained. And this time around, we're covering a strangely relevant topic in the best possible way. The lore way. You may be familiar with the fact that Snake Eye is part of the ongoing Diabellstar lore, but what you may not know is that their current best partner, the Fire Kings, also have some lore. That's right, these fiery fauna are beleaguered by an invading army that lives within the crashing waves that surround their island home, the Atlanteans. Led by their fearsome and callous leader, Poseidra, this great serpent of the deep seeks power and conquest above all else, and the realm of Garunix is in their warpath. But they aren't the only ones, because to conquer this island, the Atlanteans will need the power of a sacred artifact, rumored to have power over the weather itself, calling forth devastating storms and torrential downpours. The perfect tool for quelling the fire that's natural to all of the island's inhabitants. But to do this, they'll have to fight a war on a second front against the peace-loving Mermails. And as it turns out, mechanically, these two themes, despite being on opposite sides of the war, work together beautifully. So we can't do something as cruel as splitting them apart, so let's get on our diving suits, descend beneath the waves, and fathom what could be beyond these fathoms. It's time to water down the competition with Mermails and Atlanteans explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. As they're the smaller of the two themes, we'll be starting with Atlanteans, so what's the deal with them? Well, they're a series of water attribute sea serpent monsters that have two main characteristics. The smaller monsters that trigger effects when sent to the grave to activate the effects of water monsters, and cards that either are or support Poseidra, which can use water monsters to activate their effects. How synergistic! Let's kick things off with a normal monster, Atlantean Pikeman, a level 2 monster with 1400 attack and 0 defense. The Great Ocean Lord, who reigns over the depths, is served by these lancers. Deep sea creatures exist in fear of facing the stream of attacks their lances are capable of. It's got a pretty decent stat spread for a level 2 monster, so if you're looking to brew some kind of water sprite deck, you've got an unexpected die target right here. Not much else of note to go on, but I knew that if I didn't cover them, I'd be hunted down out of pike. Alright, now we can move on to our effect monsters, and our first is probably one of the best. Neptibus the Atlantean Prince is a level 1 monster with 800 attack and 0 defense, and you can send an Atlantean monster from your deck to the grave to add an Atlantean card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this one. And if this card is sent to the grave to activate the effect of a water monster, you can target an Atlantean monster in your grave, accept a copy of this card, and special summon it. This card was, and honestly still is, a huge shot in the arm for the Merlantian strategy, because it just does everything. Being able to send from the deck as cost will trigger every Atlantean effect, so keep that in mind as we roll through the rest of the roster, but because it also nabs you another Atlantean for doing so, you have fuel for another effect for even more value. Even its own effect that summons an Atlantean is pretty good because we're sending them to the grave all the time for its own effect. And we have a couple of pretty relevant ones too. The only thing that gets me about this card is that it's not itself the Atlantean Prince. Once we get to the Mermail part, you'll see what I mean. Atlantean Heavy Infantry is a level 2 monster with 0 attack and 1600 defense, and during your main phase, you can normal summon a level 4 or lower Sea Serpent monster in addition to your normal summoner set that turn. And when this card is sent to the grave to activate a water monster's effect, you target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy that target. As a body, this can help swarm your board with Sea Serpents, very important for Poseidra itself, but you may be more familiar with it as the card that snipes known threats. You wouldn't really expect that from a monster with the double shield combo. They seem more of the protective type, but you try taking a hit from that big fish face and see if you walk away. Believe me, that thing's pretty heavy. Atlantean Attack Squad is a level 3 monster with 1400 attack and 0 defense, and gains 800 attack while you control a face-up fish, sea serpent, or aqua monster other than this card. In a stunning turn of events, this does not have the usual when used for a water monster's effect. It just turns into a big bungler, even bigger than Cyber Dragon, which is wild. This makes for an excellent pair with heavy infantry, as well as the monsters we'll cover in just a moment. Though, because they are quite different from the other monsters we'll talk about in a bit, I do have to wonder, why they think they're part of the squad? Atlantean Marksman is a level 3 monster with 1400 attack and 0 defense, and when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Atlantean Sea Serpent monster from your deck, except a copy of this card. And when this card is sent to the grave to activate a water monster's effect, target a set card your opponent controls and destroy it. So like with infantry, this helps to mobilize more of your Atlanteans, this time when you're able to get in for some battle damage. And getting to pull from your whole deck is pretty strong. But like with heavy infantry, this is largely used as removal, hitting any set card your opponent controls. Also, notice that this and infantry are mandatory effects, so these aren't going to be chain blocking anything on a future chain. But regardless of how you use this card, you can be sure it'll always hit the mark. Legendary Atlantean Tridon is a level 3 monster with 1600 attack and 800 defense, and you contribute this card and a Sea Serpent monster to special summon a Poseidra, the Atlantean dragon, from your hand or deck. Then all monsters your opponent currently controls lose 300 attack. This is going to be your preferred method of summoning this big boss. Not only does it cost less, it summons directly from the deck. If you have this and heavy infantry in your hand, that'd be all you need, and you get that removal. Though at this point, the attack reduction effect just seems petty. 300 is such an oddly specific amount. Like, it's not that it can't matter, but 300? These are mighty beasts from the deep ocean, legendary creatures of torrential destruction, and you can only manage to reduce someone's attack by as much as a Karibo? Honestly, I'm embarrassed for you. Atlantean Dragoons is a level 4 monster with 1800 attack and 0 defense, and while on the field, all level 3 or lower Sea Serpent monsters you control can attack your opponent directly, a great asset for making marksmen get in for damage. And if sent to the grave to activate a water monster's effect, you can add a Sea Serpent monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. That's right, any other Sea Serpent. This is partially the reason why Neptibus was such a huge deal. You can send Dragoons from deck to grave as cost to add another copy of Dragoons, searching a Sea Serpent, which may have an effect that uses a water monster for its effect, which would then trigger the second Dragoons to get another search because the effect is not once per turn. These are the glue that holds the deck together and helps it run super consistently, proving that Dragoons are not to be trifled with. Best character class, do not at me. Poseidra the Atlantean Dragon is a level 7 monster with 2800 attack and 1600 defense, and you contribute 3 level 3 or lower water monsters to special summon this card from your hand or grave. When you do, return all spell and trap cards on the field to the hand, and if you do, if 3 or more are returned to the hand by this effect, all monsters your opponent currently controls lose 300 attack for each. Now this is a reduction effect. We're looking at a 900 point debuff across the enemy board at minimum, and it's a giant Trunade to boot. You get to clear out your opponent's back row, and you potentially get to reuse the effects of your own spells and traps. Not to mention you can trigger the effects of any Neptibus, infantry, or marksman you tribute for this summon. Though, strangely enough not Dragoons, it's just one level too high. Guess adding a Sea Serpent Rhoda was a bit too much, huh? Despite how old it is, this is actually a pretty spicy boss monster held back by the absolutely obscene material requirements for its summon effect. But I spy with my little eye a neckband that looks an awful lot like Neptibus's tiara. I wonder what that could mean. Our last card for this section is actually a spell, Call of the Atlanteans, a quick play spell card that targets 3 level 3 or lower Sea Serpent monsters in your grave and special summons all 3 of them, but you cannot special summon any other monsters during the turn you activate this card. This is largely used to get all your monsters back onto the field so you can tribute them all for Poseidra. The issue is the summon lock, so you can only really use this effectively during your opponent's end phase, or if you're desperate for blockers. Now, I could rant about how much reused art is in this picture. These are exactly the same images as Dragoon, and the background is full of Atlantean silhouettes. But honestly, I just want to know what the vehicle Poseidra is on. I love that little water chariot. Alright, now that we've covered all the Atlanteans, now it's time to pivot over to the Mermails. Instead of Sea Serpents, these monsters are a mix of fish, aqua, and sea serpents, and have a big focus on performing Xyz summons, like big Xyz summons, assisted by some equally large monsters that can be summoned by sending water monsters to the grave. No wonder these themes work so well together. Though it doesn't hurt that many of our lower leveled Mermails have effects that trigger when sent to graveyard in various ways. First up, we have Mermail Abyssdine, a level 3 aqua monster with 1000 attack and 200 defense, and when this card is added from your deck or grave to your hand by a card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, but you must control a Mermail monster to activate and resolve this effect. When this card is special summoned by the effect of a Mermail monster, you can target a level 3 or lower Mermail monster in your grave and special summon it. But you can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn, which sadly means you can't chain the first effect into the second one. That makes it like an anti-Poplar. There is no better metric to see how the game has evolved than this. As it stands now, Dine can either turn a search effect into a special summon, or you can supplement a special summon effect with another, but not both. We'll see how that factors into our other cards moving forward, though I'm not quite sure if they'll appreciate us pulling off the old Abyss Dine and dash. Mermail Abyss Gund is a level 3 aqua monster with 1400 attack and 800 defense, and if this card is discarded to the grave, you can target a Mermail monster in your grave except a copy of this card and special summon it. That's pretty dope and makes for great discard fodder. It doesn't even negate the effect, and we have a wide variety of Mermails to choose from to handle a lot of effects. So if you found yourself in a sticky situation, you can always count on this to get you out from under the Abyss Gund. Mermail Abyss Hilda is a level 3 aqua monster with 1300 attack and 400 defense, and if this card is sent to the grave, you can special summon a Mermail monster from your hand. This is a bit more flexible than Gund since it only cares about being sent to the grave at all, but only special summons from the hand, which is pretty unfortunate, since the ones that need the help summoning from hand have ways to do it themselves and work better that way when you do so. It's not all a wash. We do have some Mermails coming up that have on-summon effects that we can supplement by using Hilda to have them summoned alongside other monsters, but when looking to maximize our card selection, Hilda isn't doing much to help convince us to make room. I mean, I'm open to hearing arguments on the contrary, but it's not a Hilda I'm ready to die on. Mermail Linda is a level 3 aqua monster with 1500 attack and 1200 defense, and if this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon a Mermail monster from your deck, except a copy of this card. Now, this is a popular card in the theme. We have a few cards that can help trigger this, but even without them, it floating into any on-theme monster from just being destroyed means you can surprise your opponent with just about anything, or call up just the right monster for any situation. Trust me, your opponent won't know what they're Lin for. Mermail Abyss Nere is a level 3 aqua monster with 1200 attack and 2000 defense, and as a quick effect, you can discard this card, then target a water monster you control. Destroy one other water monster in your hand or on your field, and if you do, the targeted monster gains attack and defense equal to the destroyed monster's original attack and defense until the end of this turn. And if this card is sent from the field to the grave, you can draw a card, then discard a card. So it's a weird Honest Neos type effect. It adds one water monster stats to another, and by destroying it, this will trigger Abyss Lind and Hilda. And if you need a little hand fixing, you can find a way to get this from the field into the graveyard, and because of that discard, that can trigger Gund. It's an interesting piece of legacy support, but considering how costly its effect seems to be, I don't imagine that it's very popular. It's nowhere near close to what we're looking for. Mermail Abyss Oshia is a level 3 aqua monster with 1100 attack and 1900 defense, and it can target a Mermail monster you control to special summon any number of level 4 or lower Mermail monsters from your deck whose combined level is less than or equal to the level of that monster. Then, send that targeted monster to the grave. This is kinda cool, so you take one of your big Mermails and break it up into little bite-sized chunks. If a big one is just lying around on your field and there's nothing to do with it, Oshia grabs a few others that can be put to work. And if you've enjoyed the ones we've covered so far, you're gonna love the ones we have in store. Honestly, your options are gonna be as deep as, well, the ocean. Mermail Abyss Lung is a level 4 fish monster with 1200 attack and 1800 defense, and your opponent can't target face-up water monsters for attacks except this one. And while on the field, all water monsters you control gain 300 attack. So this gives you a way to redirect attacks away from key targets, which is kinda nice, and can even set up an attack lock if you get 2 of these onto the board at the same time. And that's not the only thing you get in multiples, as these attack boosts will stack, each one getting you a total of 300? No, this is ridiculous. You have to be kidding me. Again? What is with this number? Mermail Abyss Mander is a level 4 fish monster with 100 attack and 2000 defense, and you can banish this card from your grave to increase the level of all Mermail monsters you currently control by either 1 or 2. Yeah, not much else to say here. It's a level modulator for an Xyz deck. It's actually pretty common. Pretty laid back too, though I don't know if that's the right kind of attitude to be having when your civilization is at war with a giant sea dragon. Maybe show a little bit of pep? Mermail Abyss Nose is a level 4 fish monster with 1500 attack and defense, and when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, you can discard a water monster to the grave to special summon a Mermail monster from your deck in defense position. So basically, you run over something, then trade out a water from hand for a Mermail from deck. Kinda feels odd that your Flamvel Fire Dog has an additional cost, and, you know, I get it. You want an outlet to trigger your other effects, but like, just give it another effect that you can feed waters to. 1500 is already barely passable as it is for a monster that needs to win battles to work. Tacking on another hurdle is just cruel. It appears that the nose does not, in fact, no. Mermail Abyss Spike is a level 4 fish monster with 1600 attack and 800 defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can discard a water monster to add a level 3 water monster from your deck to your hand. So we get a hand fixer that can trigger our effects because of the cost, searching out our smaller mermails, especially Gund, who can get us some cool special summons just from discarding them. It does require you already have the right cards in hand to make the most of it, but setting things up for other cards is still a pretty nice consolation. Not a fan of the attitude though. We already have a monster that's dealing with the whole pike thing. We don't need another pike, man. Mermail Abyss Sturge is a level 4 fish monster with 1700 attack and 1100 defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can discard a water monster to the grave, then target a level 3 or lower monster in your grave and add it to your hand. This is basically Abyss Spike, but for the mid to late game, recovering cards stranded in the grave to use them again later. We'll generally be getting back Gund so we can revive the mermails we're pitching to the grave, and if we use this cycle to trigger the effects of cards like Abyss Spike, not only will we be able to keep all of our best cards in hand, we'll have plenty of monsters to use for Xyz summoning. It's such a good line of play, it's got me absolutely sturgid. Mermail Abyss Baleen is a level 7 aqua monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, and you can discard 4 other Mermail monsters to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. When you do, target cards your opponent controls up to the number of Mermail monsters in your grave, if possible. This card gains 500 attack, and if it does, destroy those targets, if any. It can also tribute one other face-up attack position Mermail monster for Baleen to gain an effect where if it fights a defense position monster at the start of the damage step, destroy it. God, this card is so close to being good. If you could, say, discard up to 4 other mermails, this wouldn't be so resource intensive, while kind of scaling to the amount of resources you put into it. And the fact that the bonus effect destroys the defense position monster instead of dealing piercing to take advantage of its big attack stat throws me for a friggin' loop. As it stands now, Baleen takes way too many cards to do way too little. If I wanted to give up my whole hand as part of a play sequence, I'd just go play Infernity. Mermail Abyss Lead is a level 7 sea serpent monster with 2700 attack and 1000 defense, and you can discard 3 other water monsters to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. When summoned this way, you can target an Abyss Spell or Trap card from your grave and add it to your hand. You can also tribute one other attack position Mermail monster to send a random card from your opponent's hand to the grave. This is better. Being able to send water monsters means you have more options to pay the toll, and it's even 1 card cheaper. It even gets you back an Abyss Spell or Trap card, more on those later. Though, keep in mind, it's Abyss with a dash at the end, so no getting Herald of the Abyss back or anything like that. But discarding 3 cards is still a hefty price. Not to mention that hand ripping effect is way too underwhelming. I don't really think they followed a good Abyss lead on this one. Mermail Abyss Megalo is a level 7 sea serpent monster with 2400 attack and 1900 defense, and you can discard 2 other water monsters to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. When summoned this way, you can add an Abyss Spell or Trap card from your deck to your hand, and you can tribute 1 other attack position water monster so this card can make a second attack during each battle phase that turn. This card feels like it hit the sweet spot, as this is our level 7 of choice, at least in terms of offense. 2 discards isn't too much, especially if those cards give you some bonus effects. And searching our deck is usually better than recovering from the grave. And it comes with an unrestricted double attack, if you can pay the tribute cost. It's even easier to use because you can tribute an attack position water monster, not just a mermail. And believe me when I say that the cards we can search are going to boost our offensive power in a big way. And we can even grab this off of Dragoon. So don't ever let me catch you saying that this shark is weak. Mermail Abystius is a level 7 aqua monster with 1700 attack and 2400 defense, and you can discard one other water monster to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. And when summoned this way, you can add a level 4 or lower Mermail monster from your deck to your hand. This is the perfect Mermail in terms of resource management. It may cost you 1 water to summon, but replaces itself with a search, enabling the effect of another Mermail or Atlantean in the process. And from that point, it's just kinda chillin', waiting to be used as Xyz material. Heck, if we search out Abyss Oshia, we can just normal summon it next to Stius and turn that monster into a level 3 and 4 Mermail. But my favorite part is that this kinda looks like Gladiator Beast Secutor. It's even kinda doing the same pose. I think they might be siblings. Alright, that does it for the main deck monsters. Now let's take a look at our extra deck monsters. Mermail Abyss Strike is a rank 3 Sea Serpent Xyz monster with 1600 attack and 2800 defense, requiring 3 level 3 monsters as material. During either player's turn, when your opponent targets exactly one face-up Mermail monster you control for an attack, or with a spell or trap effect that could have targeted this card except during the damage step, you can detach a material from this card, and that attack or effect now targets this card instead. And when this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can target a Mermail monster in your grave and special summon that target. This is basically like leaving a landmine for your opponent to inadvertently trigger. It doesn't redirect monster effects, sadly, but anything else can get lightning rodded over to Abyss Strike to keep your other Mermails safe. And if that effect destroys, you get a free Mermail back. The only problem with this is its 3 level 3 monster requirement, one more than the usual Xyz fare, so it'd have to pull off some heinous stuff to be worth it, and as such a passive card, it very much is not that. I'd rather just summon Poseidra at this point. At least you get to futz around with the back row and ruin your opponent's offensive stats. In comparison, this card feels a little trite. Mermail Abyss Gaios is a rank 7 Aqua Xyz monster with 2800 attack and 1600 defense, requiring any 2 level 7 water monsters as material. When this face-up card has Xyz material, level 5 or higher monsters cannot attack. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls that have less attack than this card, until the end of this turn. That attack lock is very strange considering we're the same archetype that the double-attacking Abyss Megalo exists in, though I guess technically it also covers the other level 7s we have, but does incentivize you to turn those into Xyz monsters so that they can attack. The negation is also pretty cool, leveraging attack power into actual negation. Anything with 2750 or less is offline as long as you have usage of this effect. And that covers a lot of monsters. Sadly, it only counts cards on the field, so this isn't an anti-hand trap tool, but otherwise smothers a bunch of monsters. It's not even once per turn, so if something sneaks by Gaios after the first effect, you can catch him with the second. But here's where I take out the pin that I put in near the beginning of the episode. This is Poseidra. Same battle stats, attribute, level, ish, but that upper half looks like an older Neptibus, right? Well, that's because Gaios is what happens when Poseidra donned the golden bracelet he'd been looking for, because the spirit of the Mermail King was sealed inside, and could only be unleashed with a sacrifice. So, Poseidra's greed inadvertently was its own downfall. I guess that it also means that it's retroactively the Atlantean prince now that Poseidra's been replaced, but that's very confusing. Wish I'd known all that a little sooner, but you'll have to ask Coffee Ninja Ryu why it's not really my greatest moment. Mermail Abyss Latia is a Link 2 Sea Serpent monster with 1600 attack, requiring any 2 fish, sea serpent, and or aqua monsters as material. Monsters this card points to gain 500 attack and defense, and during the opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can send a card from your hand to the grave to add a Mermail monster from your deck to your hand. And if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's attack or a card effect, you can send a water monster from your deck to the grave to target a water monster in your grave and special summon it in defense position. This is a pretty neat monster, though doesn't really give you a lot of immediate benefits. The 500 point boost is pretty sweet, giving many of our smaller Mermails a decent size while making our bigger ones like Megalo absolutely absurd. Hand fixes you during your opponent's turn, which can inadvertently trigger our Atlantean effects, and is a revival when our opponent destroys this. And because the cost is paid from the deck, it's actually a huge benefit because we can choose from a variety of effects to supplement that revival. So, all in all, Abyss Latia has a lot of good points to it. I mean, just look at that trident. It's already got 3 good points on it right there. Next up, let's take a look at the deck's spell and trap offerings, the Abyss cards. And first among them, we have a trio of equipped spells, the Abyss Scale of Cetus, Kraken, and Mizuchi. Each can only be equipped to a Mermail monster, grants them an attack boost, Kraken giving 400, while the other two boost by 800, and each can negate the effect of a particular card, but are then sent to the grave. Kraken negates monster effects, Mizuchi negates spells, and Cetus negates trap cards. The interesting parts are A, they're mandatory, so they'll only work on the first instance of that effect, so your opponent can kind of play around them if they have a spare effect to feed to that card before the one they actually want to have resolve gets played. B, they only count effects on the opponent's field, so Kraken can't stop hand traps, and none of them can deal with graveyard ones. And C, they negate on resolution, they don't actually activate. This means you can negate cards you aren't normally allowed to respond to, like Super Polymerization. In fact, it's these options that help make Megalo one of our most popular picks to summon, searching you a card to help insulate you against a variety of effects. These are some fantastic equipped spells, and do a lot to really tip the scales in your favor. Abyss Scorn is a normal trap card that targets a Mermail monster you control to have it gain 1000 attack until the end phase, and when this set card is sent to the grave, target a monster your opponent controls and send that target to the grave. So if you anticipate that your opponent has some strong back row removal on hand, like Harpy's Feather Duster, you can keep this as a little something to make them regret their life choices by taking out one of their monsters. And if they don't fall for it, hey, that's cool. You can still boost a Mermail by 1000 attack, which isn't nothing. Let me tell you, for a bunch of peace-loving fish people, I didn't think they could get so into combat. Even little baby Abyssdine isn't on the action. I love it when the Moe blobs have a murderous streak. Abyss Squall is a normal trap card that targets 3 Mermail monsters in your grave and special summons those targets in face-up defense position. Their effects are negated, they can't declare an attack, and you destroy them during the end phase. That seems pretty similar to Call of the Atlanteans, but at least here, you don't have to contend with a summon lock. Instead, you get to use these monsters as material for other summons. Lynx, Xyz, whatever you want. Heck, you can even just let Squall explode your monsters, letting Lind summon out another Mermail. The issue, again, is that this is a normal trap card, so unless you're on some kind of transaction rollback nonsense, you're gonna have to wait a while to get value out of this. Not such a bad ask when it first released, almost impossible to follow up on now. But they weren't kidding when they said that golden bracelet had incredible powers, and the Atlanteans are using it for the most vile thing imaginable: harassing women. This vile crime will not be forgiven. Abyss Strom is a normal trap card that sends an Umi you control to the grave to send all spell and trap cards on the field to the grave. Oh hey, good to see ya. This had a brief stint in our video about the Umi cards, but now we can talk about it a bit more at length. See, the place the Mermails all live is the field spell Lemuria, which has a great effect for manipulating the levels of water monsters you control to help with Xyz summoning. But it's also one of the many cards that also counts as Umi, so now it's tied into the lore via that effect, giving you a heavy storm that's searchable. And honestly, in the case of Lemuria, it doesn't do much once it's done level modulating, so it's not that bad a card to give up. Though, if you activate this, you are basically making the Mermails homeless, so think about that the next time you try to put that on your deck list. Abyss Sphere is a continuous trap card that special summons a Mermail monster from your deck. Its effects are negated, and while this card is face up on the field, you can't activate any spell cards. And when this card leaves the field, destroy the summoned monster. Also, destroy this card during your opponent's next end phase after activation. This was one of the biggest defensive cards the deck had to offer, specifically in combination with Linda. If your opponent threatened a direct attack, you could flip Sphere, summon out Lind, and if they ran over it, you got a free Mermail. And if they decided against it and just move on to main phase 2, Sphere would pop during the end phase and you would still get a Mermail. It's honestly kinda wild and gives your deck a lot of reach, though they probably kept you from activating spells so you couldn't just MST it or the like to pop this on your own time. This is probably still a very useful card to have on hand, even in the modern day, but for the love of God, make sure that you activate this before going to your opponent's end phase, because it gets destroyed during the next of their end phases. So if you're a little late on that, you're gonna be stuck with Sphere for a lot longer than you like, and even if you remove the summoned monster, guess what? Sphere doesn't automatically blow up, so do not hit yourself with an anti-magic field. Please learn from my mistakes. Alright, that's all of the Mermail cards. Now here's a little combo you'll want to keep in mind. First, we need a copy of Neptibus. Not only can you run 3 copies of it, you can also summon this right out of your deck with Deep Sea Diva, or search this with Deep Sea Aria. Heck, even a good old 1-for-1 helps here, so you have a lot of options to get this little dude into rotation. We'll also need Mermail Abystius, which is a bit harder to come by, but we also want to be running at least 3 of them because of how good it is in general. Once Neptibus is on the field, have it send Atlantean Dragoons from your deck to the graveyard to add another copy of Dragoons from your deck to your hand. With the Dragoon search, grab Abyss Megalo. Next, use Abystius to pitch the other Dragoons to summon itself. With the Stius search, grab Abyss Gund, and with the Dragoon search, grab Abyss Lead. Pitch the Gund and Lead to summon Megalo, which will trigger Gund, summoning out the lead, while Megalo gets you an Abyss Speller Trap of your choice. Probably one of those nifty equip spells. Then, you can tribute Neptibus away with Megalo to give it a double attack, and that revives a copy of Dragoons. This gives you a total of 12,600 attack, with the option of a rank 7 before or after those attacks, as you can overlay Lead and Stius and still have enough for lethal. And if you need some removal to supplement that play, you can instead search out a Heavy Infantry or Marksman as your last Sea Serpent search, while the Mermail you search is Abyss Hild, if you have another Mermail you want to get out of your hand. Or vice versa, if you have Hild in hand, you can grab a Mermail you want to summon. Alright, so that's all the Mermail info I have, but what do we do with them? Well, our primary means of victory will be through battle damage, what with all the big monsters. So what we need are good water monsters we can use to fuel our effects, sea serpents we can search that provide good utility, and Xyz monsters we can leverage to subdue our opponent. So what can we play to help them out? Our water pool has a lot of strong candidates to choose from, and the sharks are a great place to start from. Abyss Shark may be a bit tough to work around considering it can only level modulate for number Xyz summons, but it grabs you a fish when summoned by its own effect, and that means you can scoop up Abyss Spike and Turge. Buzzsaw Shark can summon them as well, but their effects can't be activated when brought out that way. However, by getting them loaded into the graveyard, they can be revived by Gund later. Just make sure you're okay with only Xyz summoning for the rest of that turn. And hey, maybe you'll pull off some goofy plays where the double damage effect off a number monster will be relevant. Speaking of fish though, Tuneful Princess can also act as extra copies of Spike and Turge while accessing their full effect. The Fishborgs have some funny applications here if you are looking to break into the Synchro market. Launcher can just jump out of the grave, and Archer has a discard outlet to trigger some of your effects. But you may want to avoid Planter, that card sends as part of its effect, not the cost, so no Atlantean triggers there. Abyss Strom mentioned Umi, and while Lemuria is the intended option, a legendary Ocean also puts in some work. Not only can it help us play some of Mako's best cards, it also lowers Atlantean Dragoon's level enough so that it can benefit from its own direct attacking effect. It even gains a 200 point boost, meaning it swings in for a clean 2,000 without any obstruction. The downside is that it messes with all of your level math, but rank 6s are getting better and better all the time, so it's not too bad of a trade-off. Ice Jades also shouldn't be overlooked. Acti's discard to draw effect turns into a +1 if you use an Atlantean, and Tremora can get big mermails out of your hand that you don't have the material to summon with their own effect. Also, Adrian being a 1-card Jaimir or Chung Ying once your opponent has established a monster is really cool. And thanks to the recent Forbidden and Limited list update, we finally have the entire Dragon Ruler core back, which means it's time for Tidal. Its discard effect works with our Atlanteans, sets up our grave with monsters, and acts as more level 7 material for summons. Heck, we could also utilize its baby version, Stream, as a way to summon it right out of our deck, and that's a water monster, sending other water monsters to grave for its effect. What's not to like? How about our Sea Serpent category? Well, a popular pick is Lapis Dragon, because if you add it from your deck to your hand, you just get to special summon it, and 5 levels worth of tuner isn't nothing. Deep Sea Minstrel is a huge pickup. You discard it alongside a water monster to take a look at your opponent's hand, and even banish a card out of it until the end phase, giving you perfect knowledge of what your opponent is up to, and even removing a piece of interaction for the whole turn. But the most famous one for us is easily Mowling Glacia, the Elemental Lord. Hand looping for 2 is pretty saucy, and while it could end up giving our opponent more cards to work with in some situations, more and more decks do love the graveyard after all, it's less cards in hand they can use to mount an offensive or make a comeback. And if you can find another level 8 monster to pair with this, you can just overlay on top of the Mowling Glacia so you don't have to worry about the battle phase skip.
Speaking of Xyzs, we have some silly options. There are, of course, the classic rank 7s for our big Mermails, Big Eye, Dracossack, Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon if your opponent's getting a little low on life points. You may even be able to make use of Dark Armed, the Dragon of Annihilation for some spot removal. But I'm much more interested in the rank 4 options we mentioned during our combo. Abyss Dweller is, as always, a fantastic way to shut off your opponent's graveyard, but in our deck actually works as an attack buffer, giving 500 to all of our waters as long as we have a water under it as material. Number 4 Stealth Kraken is an obscenely annoying Zodiac Trident that floats into smaller, deadlier mini Tridents. And the pièce de résistance, Bahamut Shark, which really means totally awesome, which gives you an Omni Negate. We even have strong enablers in the form of Silent Angler and Silent Sea Nettle to get those level 4 materials onto the board to make this happen. Oh, and fun fact, if you detach an Atlantean as material for an Xyz monster to activate its effect, yeah, that counts as going to the graveyard to activate the effect of a water monster. Detach Dragoons from Abyss Dweller, and not only do you lock out the grave, you also get a Sea Serpent Surge. It is incredible. As for a silly tech pick, we have one of the coolest ways of triggering our Atlantean effects out there, Gen X Undyne. Send any water monster from your deck to the grave as cost, and you get a little extra normal tuner for your troubles. But that's not too silly, right? Undyne was a pretty popular choice when Merlantians were running the tables, so what gives here? Well, with the advent of Repair Gen X Controller, Undyne could be back in a big way, as it is valid material for that Link monster. Now, it does limit our special summons from the extra deck. We can only summon Synchro monsters using Gen X tuners as material, but really, most of our power comes from the main deck, so this could inexplicably be a great splash to fill your field with power Synchro monsters, using our on-theme ones to help supplement those Synchros. I mean, our big Mermails are 7, Gen X Controller is a 3, Baron's not around anymore, but Dissipator is. You do the math. Alright, that's everything I have on Mermails, but how does it stack up against the Nova scale? Novelty. Around this point in the game, costs were starting to become a part of a deck's engine instead of an opportunity cost, and Mermails embodies this to such a literal degree that I think it actually has a literary degree. We'll see permutations of this style of gameplay crop up over the course of the game's history, arguably up to and including Diabellstar. So, for paving the way, I've got to give Mermails a 5 in novelty. Objectivity. In general, I don't see Merlantians getting away with many heinous things, except under very specific circumstances. One of the variants you can play is the hand loop one, spamming cards like Mountain Glaciers as much as possible, as well as the new suite of deep sea cards. Otherwise, really cool deck, lots of neat stuff going on here, but because the hand loops could potentially cause some really unfun non-games, Mermails are getting a 4 in objectivity. Versatility. By their very nature, Mermails are already combining with Atlanteans, but it's basically the same deck anyways. It's kind of like saying that spell books have versatility because prophecy exists. That being said, our tech pick section is stuffed to the gills with options, though I can't really remember the last time another deck wanted to run Neptibus, which is currently in the best possible position to be splashable once Sea Serpents get the Pyro and Rock treatment. So, at time of writing, Mermails get a 2 in versatility. Awesomeness. Honestly, I think this deck is pretty cool. It's got a great resource system where you're juggling cards around, making use of various material to accomplish your playlines, and it's here to close out games quickly with big monsters, but can also access various Synchro, Xyz, and even Link plays. So I'm giving this deck a 4 in awesomeness, which means Mermails get a 15 out of 20 on the Nova scale. And that's all I have to say about Mermails. This deck was pretty clean and still has a lot of potential, and we're likely to see that potential fulfilled in just a few months. Just like how Fire King's got an updated structure deck, keep an eye out for the updated Atlantean one. So I hope you learned a thing or two here, because it's about to be tested. So get your water wings on, jump into the deep end, and get ready to make some waves. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Mermails and Atlanteans on the sea level, or are we gonna ebb more than we flow? And which one's your favorite? I know Abyssly doesn't see a lot of play, but god do I love its design. Let me know which one's your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out.
Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the lovely people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, the Critic of Innocence and Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Owexitowa Hime, Anansi Dragon, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Emony-chan, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Muzuki Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Serenity Towns, Skybuster Leo, That One Dumbass and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Alpha Sly, Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Berin von Titty Sprinkles, Beluga Master, Blitzwolf, Blue Gem, Borger with the Shotgun, Callum McCann, Chaz Ghost, Childish Lamar, Dr. Reaper RIP, Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh!, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, Mick Spoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Obsidian, Ramen Resurrection, Seawing 22, Shizuka Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, Terror Top to 3, The Pokemon 52, The Legendary Raven and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you could check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member.
And if you'd like to see another big video about a lot of archetypes that are, as it turns out, also water-themed, check out this video where I cover the Umi-related cards. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.